Hey everyone, Forbidden Exile here, and welcome to a new video. So, the 3.21 Crucible League live stream just happened earlier today, and they released the patch notes because there wasn't a balance manifesto. So, got a lot to cover here, so get right into it. So if you haven't looked at it yet, as you can see here, there's a lot that they did to update the game. So we'll just kind of start here at the top. Obviously, this is just kind of information about the Crucible League itself. I won't go into that. There's a whole video, the live stream, and but it's super cool. It's a crafting league, so I'm super excited for that. So some new content. So they did add 9 new Val skill gems: Absolution, Animate Weapon, Arctic Armor, Domination, Firestorm, Ice Shot, Lightning Arrow, Reap, and Rejuvenation Totem. They showed some of the skills. They showed like Lightning Arrow and stuff and Arctic Armor. It looks super cool. I'm really glad when they add Val skills because, you know, it's just that extra skill that you get for free. So the Atlas Gateways thing is actually really interesting. So on your Atlas tree, you know, if you're trying to go for, you know, Delirium or something like that, but you want to go for something else on the other side, you don't have to path there anymore. You just path to one of these gateways, and then it'll give you a skill point on the other side, and then you can carry on from there. So it's really cool. They did add some new skill gems. So they added Snipe as an actual gem, which is pretty awesome for like bow skills. You basically charge up your bow, and then, you know, you get one really powerful shot. So they also added Mana Forged Arrows, which supports bow attack skills as well. They're really, reading through all this, they're helping out the bow builds, which is pretty cool. Basically, it causes them to trigger when you've spent an amount of total mana on other bow attacks based on the supported skill's mana cost, and then they deal more damage based on their mana cost, but it can't modify minions. So that'll be pretty cool, kind of like a cast on crit triggering skill. Prismatic Burst supports attacks, causes them to trigger. There's a lot of triggering skills. Trigger the Prismatic Burst spell. It can't support triggered attacks or attacks used by things other than you, so you have to manually trigger it. And then it can't modify skills of minions. Basically, it chooses an element at random and deals damage of that type in an area, and then it's basically determining, it's determined by what stat you have higher. So strength makes it more likely to choose fire, dexterity makes it more likely to choose cold, and then intelligence makes it more likely to choose lightning. So that'll be pretty fun to play around with. Momentum supports attack skills that aren't triggered. Using those skills will grant momentum, which is lost when you move. So I'm not entirely sure about this one. They did replace Onslaught with momentum, is what they kind of explained later. So giving us 10 new unique items. They've released 2 of them so far, the gloves and then that jewel. So I'll be interested to see what other ones that they'll release. And they did preview 2 of them in the live stream that are specific for the league. 5 new div cards, and then they actually raised the stacks of not just Chaos Orbs, which is what they released, but also Alks, Vals, Chaos Orbs, Tainted Chaos Orbs, Eldritch Chaos Orbs, and Veiled Chaos Orbs as well. And then the items that you can buy in Vendor Shop when you're leveling up to try and get kind of your beginning gear, they actually stay in there for multiple levels, which is pretty cool. So you can actually get older items, you know, if maybe you didn't need that one or you leveled past it and then you go back to try and buy it, it'll still be there. All right, so for the Breach rework, there's going to be more monsters. It's going to be more dense, which is super nice because at the end of a Breach, is kind of, they said in the live stream, I felt that way. I used to love playing Breach, but, you know, once the bubble gets really big, it gets kind of boring and it's a really big space to cover. So more dense will make it more dangerous, but it'll make it more fun. The number of Breach splinters dropped are now affected by the increases and reductions to item quantity. That's pretty cool. They actually removed charged, enriched, and pure Breach stones. The existing items will just be downgraded to regular Breach stones after 3.21 goes live. They raised the monster level of Zoftul and Esh Breach stones of 81. It was 70, and then Unatol's is now 82, previously 75, and then Chula's was 80, and now it's 83, so they're going to be more difficult. So in order to get flawless Breach stones, you either have to use a Breach Blessing, which are now rarer, so it's good for standard players that might have a bunch of blessings, or there's a skill on the Atlas tree, or a node on the Atlas tree that will give you a chance to drop a flawless one as well. So you cannot drop them from Maven invitations anymore. So that's a big one. And going with the fact that they're more dense, they actually will be opening and closing faster. These 2 lines right here, so the rate at which breaches open and close in the containment chamber and the House of Other Incursion Rooms has been reduced, and the rate in which breaches open and close in Nico's memory has been reduced as well. So overall, They reduced the time of opening and closing, so it'll make it a lot smoother to run. They changed some passives on the tree, and then they adjusted the scarabs to account for the changes as well. As far as the uniques go, they changed a lot of the jewels here. I'm not going to go through and read all these jewels, shields. You can read it as well. I'll put the direct link to this in the description below. As far as Abyss goes, I don't really play Abyss a lot, but just reading through this, kind of the ones that I picked up on, and one of the things they mentioned in the live stream is that they always contain a lich. So the rate of encountering one is unchanged, but the abyssal depths are rarer than before. A spire can spawn instead of the trove, so it'll just drop stuff right there on the map. And then abyssal depths can now only appear in level 78 or above, as opposed to 70 and above before. Just like Breach, they adjusted some of the uniques, and then they also adjusted the scarabs to account for the changes with Abyss. As far as Atlas changes go, every league they'll remove maps, or they'll bring maps back. So these are the maps they brought back to the Atlas. You can see them all right here. If one of those were your favorite map and they took it away, then good for you. These are the maps that they removed. So if one of those were your favorite maps, well, sorry for you. With that, obviously, some of the map bosses that you're required to upgrade your Pantheon have changed, so make sure you check that out. Locations and tiers have been shuffled around. Crafting recipes that were unlocked in certain maps, if those were removed, then they're in a different map. And then div cards, same thing. If they were found in a specific map, then they'll go to a different map. Arrogance of the Val can now be found in the Val Pyramid map. And then Broken Promises found in Core, Immortal Resolve found in Crystal Ore, so on and so forth. So this one is pretty cool. They just straight up told you where to find the doctor card here. So Putrid Cloister, Sepulture, I think is what you said, Wastepool and Phantasmagoria maps. People are going to run on those to get those doctors, to get headhunters. As far as the endgame changes go, so they added profane modifiers that can roll on maps, which maps, logbooks, delve biomes, and heist contracts. It's pretty dangerous if you're not chaos immune. Basically, it causes monsters to deal extra fizz as chaos, and it causes them to inflict withered for 2 seconds, so you take even more chaos damage. So that'll be a nasty one if you're not chaos immune or don't have a lot of chaos res, or damage mitigation, or life regen, something like that. So the Eldritch Altar modifier that caused you to have reduced cooldown recovery rate per power charge was replaced with reduced crit multiplier per power charge. So I play Forbidden Rite, and that reduced cooldown recovery pretty much destroys your build. So that was nice. One less one that I have to look out for and not accidentally click. They adjusted the Maven Invitation item quantity atlas passives, so they don't give you 3% increased quantity of items found in the Crucible. Now they just provide final map boss in each map has 8% increased chance to drop an invitation, which, but they did increase the amount of crescent splinters that you get, so it's a pretty nice trade-off. The Harvest Craft to apply the enchantment to a non-unique map, causing it not to consume sextant charges, got replaced with a 50% chance not to consume sextant uses. So those infinite sextant tricks aren't really going to work anymore. And then replica unique item rewards and grand heists no longer have a higher chance than normal to spawn with a high number of sockets or links, so you'll find a lot less 6-linked replica uniques and grand heists. Apparently they made a mistake letting the Balance of Terror drop from the Voidborn Reliquary, so they disabled that. And then the Iron Bard Divination card has been re-enabled and is now called the Rusted Bard, and awards 4 Tainted Mythic Orbs, which is pretty sweet. So as far as the passive skill and mastery changes, I mean, there's there's a lot of them. They actually added 2 new ones, but they did a lot of changes to this whole entire mastery system. There's a couple ones that just kind of really stood out to me. So Leech Mastery, so you get 10% instant Leech, which will help a lot with hit-based builds. Anything that hits and leeches, you get 10% of it as instant. And there's another one that I really am excited about is 12% mana increased mana reservation efficiency of skills. That'll help a lot with mana. Spell suppression, so this is a big one. So spell suppression chance is lucky. So if you don't know what lucky means, like if you have crit chances lucky, basically it'll take 2 of them and then it'll roll it and then it'll pick the highest one. So you have a better chance of getting 100% spell suppression chance if you don't have max spell suppression. They added a whole new stun mastery, so there's a lot of pretty cool ones in there. Yeah, there's a lot of masteries that they changed, and They make it pretty easy to understand. New. That's what was new. So, and then there's a whole list here. If you click show under remove masteries, and it'll tell you everything that they removed. In case you want to be sad if there was a mastery, but that really made your life better, like summon skitterbots. You don't get the mana reservation efficiency from that one anymore. As far as the passive skill tree cluster changes themselves, so they just did attack, bow, cold, fortify, link, mark, poison, recover, stance, stun avoidance, war cry. That's it. Now the ones that really stood out to me, because I play tornado shot, forbidden right, stuff like that. The attack one, they gave you multi-shot, which is pretty cool. So it gives you an additional projectile, just right there, multi-shot cluster. So for the bow clusters, the Master Fletcher notable passive skill no longer provides increased attack speed, increased accuracy, or increased projectile speed. Now it just gives you an additional arrow. So that one's good or bad, depending on how you look at it. I don't know. An additional arrow is always nice, but getting that extra accuracy to get 100% hit chance without having to level up a precision, we'll see. And then, they adjusted the 3 passive skills prior to it, and entry small passive skill for Master Fletcher cluster no longer provides accuracy, and now gives you increased damage with bows, up from 10 to 12, and then damage over time, 12 from 10 before. There's a bunch of cold cluster updates, fortify, as I said, link, mark, poison, recovery, stance, stun, war cry. They did a lot this league. Saboteur, you kind of read through here. They adjusted the Ascendancy of Saboteur. I don't necessarily feel like they completely nerfed Seismic Trap. They changed it. Obviously, you lose some mine throwing speed and stuff like that, but I think Seismic Trap will still be very effective. They didn't nerf it as much as they either planned to, or maybe they just didn't really plan to nerf it, and they were just kind of trolling people on Twitter when Jungron asked about changes and nerfs, and they made a little meme of Seismic Trap. So as far as Pathfinder goes, the flask effects and the buffs that you get for flasks on Pathfinder got reworked a little bit. So like Nature's Adrenaline used to get increased movement speed during any flask effect and increased attack speed, and now you just get a flask charge every 3 seconds, or 3 charges every 3 seconds. Master Surgeon, it used to give you removes bleeding and removes corrupted blood when you use a flask, and gain a flask charge when you deal a critical strike. That was a big one. And you would recover 6% life when you use a flask. So if you have the, use when charges reach full, which is what I did on my tornado shot build, your flasks are always proccing on their own, and you're always recovering life, and you're always gaining flask charges when you deal critical strikes, and so on and so forth. Now your life flasks not removed when unreserved life is filled, and they don't queue, but you get less life recovery. So I don't know. And then they basically just switch these two around, but you get more 50% chance for your flask not to consume a charge, as opposed to on Nature's Boon, where it used to be 20% chance to not consume charges. So they didn't necessarily nerf Pathfinder, the flask abilities into the ground, but they definitely changed it. The Veteran Boyer has been replaced with a new notable Master Distiller, so it grants bonus to non-channeling skills you use by consuming 3 charges of a flask for each of the following types if possible. This one's pretty cool. If you could just dump a bunch of bismuth flasks and get tons of Elu Pen. Amethyst flasks, Fizz is extra chaos. Diamond flasks, you get extra increased critical strike chance, so that'll be pretty cool to see what people do with that. Ascendant, they adjusted the Pathfinder and Saboteur parts to reflect the changes to Pathfinder and Saboteur. So as far as skill balance goes, this is the one that I'm always kind of worried about. This is kind of where they'll pretty much delete a skill or a build from the game. To me, it kind of looks like a lot of buffs. I don't play melee splash. Deals 40% less damage to surrounding targets at all gem levels, previously 50 at gem level 1 and 41. So you just get a flat 40%. And Awakened Melee Splash. Blight has a base duration of 2 as opposed to 2.5, but it deals 3.9 base damage at level 1, previously 3.1, and goes up to 284, up from 257. So that's definitely a buff to Blight. Explosive Trap causes 3 smaller explosions instead of 4, scaling up to 7 at gem level 20. So, you know, it's not really that big of a deal. Once you get it to level 20, then nothing changed. Shattering Steel, Exploding Steel, stuff like that. Base projectile speed of Spark has been reduced. It fires 3 additional projectiles at level 1, previously 4, and then 7 at level 20. So that wasn't changed, but the projectile speed has been lowered. Timer that prevents Spectral Throw from hitting the same target again after a hit has been reduced from 300 to 225 milliseconds, so it can hit more often. Lightning Tendrils, I don't know if anybody plays that one, but there's that one. Explosive Concoction and Poisonous Concoction. They basically, as far as the charges that they use, it went from 1 charge per projectile fired from your life flask down from 2 or 3. So you'll be able to fire off your Poisonous Concoction on League start a lot quicker. As I said earlier, they removed Onslaught support. New Momentum support has been added in its place. And then items that previously granted Onslaught support, such as the Shaco Hungry Loop unique items, instead give you Momentum. So it'll be interesting to see what that one does. So as far as attack and bow base leveling, basically the gist of all this is that you can use a lot of these gems earlier. So for example, faster attacks now has a level requirement of 8 as opposed to 18. Faster attack supports offered to them. Sniper's Mark level requirement of 4 as opposed to 24. So, you know, your bow builds, attack builds, you'll be able to, you know, start leveling those gems a lot sooner and will help a lot with leveling, I think. For scepters, they're meant to be caster oriented more than their one-handed mace counterparts, and they had a lot of increased attack speed, which really made no sense. I've wanted that for a long time. But so they lowered the base attacks per second on all of them, but they raised the base physical damage on all of them as well. So as far as the wand and vendor recipes, basically they changed the implicits on a lot of the wands. So you get flat fire, cold, lightning, stuff like that, as opposed to just increased percent spell damage. And then because of that, they changed the base type of some unique wands. So as far as Arcane Surge goes, it doesn't actually cause Arcane Surge support no longer causes it to grant you more spell damage. Now it gives you increased cast speed at gem level 1 up to 20% at gem level 20, and the supported skills deal 10% more spell damage when you have Arcane Surge at level 1, unchanged, up to 25% at level 20, previously 19%. So you actually got a 6% damage increase on that one, so that's pretty sweet for Arcane Surge. And all these miscellaneous player balances, stunning enemies become too trivial with the amount of hit damage the majority of players regularly deal. To combat this, we made it harder to stun enemies with hits for almost all skills. Melee does rely on stuns more than other archetypes for survivability. The ability for melee attacks to stun enemies has remained untouched, so that's good for you melee builds out there. Molten Shell took a bit of a hit. It now has can take damage equal to 10% of your armor up to a maximum of 5,000, as opposed to 20% of your armor at the maximum of 10,000. So that's a pretty big hit to Molten Shell. Some animate weapons, trigger skills, you know, projectiles returning, projectiles which explode, projectiles from skills which force them to explode. A lot of changes here. A really big one here is power charges. Now give you 50% increased critical strike chance per power charge. Previously it was 40. So, you know, you get 7 power charges. Now you're getting an extra 70% crit chance. So that's a big one. The Corruption Notable passive skill says it provided too high of a damage boost. So they took it from 35% increased effective wither down to 20. There's a couple more of them here. Totems spawned by players are now killed upon death, so you can't just sit there and let your totems keep killing stuff while after you're dead. And then you can actually use Withering Step on Spell Totem, which I think will be pretty cool. The bow attacks fire an additional arrow. Synthesis implicit modifier can no longer roll on bows and quivers. So that was a big mirror item. The synthesized bow attacks fire an additional arrow on bows and quivers, and that is no longer a thing. You can't get the chance for flask used to not consume charges on influence belts anymore, or the veiled mod. You can't create books of regression, so this is a big one for Infinite Heist. If you don't know how that whole thing used to work now, There's videos on it, but it doesn't matter because you can't do it anymore. But basically you would you get a book of regression, and then you could de-level yourself to keep buying heist contracts. In heist, not a thing. A couple of monster balance things, ruthless specific changes. If you play ruthless, good on you. I tried it. I didn't enjoy it. For those of you that do play ruthless, they did change some things in here, added some stuff, so feel free to read that. The map mods that they added, Fortune favors the brave. Fortune favors the brave, as always. They added Abyss Essence, which is one of my favorite ones, to run essences with all the essence mods on the Atlas tree and make tons of currency that way. Ambush, Metamorph, Heist, Expedition, and Harvest. As far as UI changes goes, you can hide your account's email address when you go to log in, which is kind of nice for streamers and content creators. You can disable tutorials for your characters you access. And then the oils required for anointing a passive skill are now displayed in text at the bottom of the passive skill hover when holding the highlight items and objects keybind, which is so nice, instead of having to look it up or go to Path of Building to see which oils you need to anoint stuff. They color-coded shop tabs and then add the ability to release captured beasts through the bestiary panel. That's cool. And they fixed a whole bunch of bugs. So yeah, I'm really excited for Crucible League. If you saw the trailer, you know, just the skill trees in the items itself, being able to just, you know, get some insane, basically synthesized gear. So excited for it. I cannot wait. Let me know in the comments what you're most excited about. Maybe something in the patch notes, you know, really upset you. Let me know. If you did enjoy the video, please give it a like. And if you are enjoying the content that I'm putting out, please consider subscribing because it really does help me out. I'll be putting out some league start guides here in the next few days. So make sure to click the notification bell so you get notified when I do post those new videos and also when I go live.